we should go off again. Hi.
We know where to find you. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming again. Great. We're having another one, like relatively close on the heels of the last one, which is good. So I'm John Graham. I know more than half of you, which is great. Also, for those of you who are new, we have been calling ourselves the Portland Legal Innovation and Technology Meetup. We've been around for, I think, a little over 2 years now. And we're sort of loosely affiliated with a more global movement known as Legal Hackers. Does anyone come to us through Legal Hackers or other things? And I don't know what the current count is, but Legal Hackers worldwide, we seem to be adding, maybe between 2 and 5 new cities globally a month. It's something that really has sort of caught fire. There are branches in Latin America, South America, there are branches in Africa, certainly all over the United States, Canada, Europe. So it's really something that's become an interesting movement, and it is, certainly generally tied towards legal innovation, technology, new solutions to sort of sticky problems that have been around the legal industry maybe for as long as time, but there's usually a very strong access to justice, access to legal services, civil justice component to the groups as well. And so in DC, for instance, where it was one of sort of the first cities to have a strong component, the Legal Hackers tied in very closely with the civic hackers and even some of the Code for America folks in the early going. So there's a lot of overlap. A lot of folks just trying to, apply their brains towards making legal services work better for more people more often. So that's kind of what we're about. Here in Portland, we do a few different things. Certainly, we're pushing for just more visibility around legal innovation and access to justice. We also very much like to highlight and sort of provide a platform for local businesses that are in the legal tech or legal innovation space, which is how we got DocketBird here tonight. So thank you guys for coming. And then sometimes we get some guest speakers as well. So we've got some interesting ones, and there's a few on YouTube. If you sort of Google around for them, there's a great one from the folks at Davis Wright Tremaine de Novo talking about how they're using data and data analytics to give information to their clients in new and interesting ways. There's a really interesting one, and I'll apologize, I kicked myself still that I didn't catch that the microphone was muted for like the first 10 minutes. But a guy named Meng Wong, who's from Singapore, he runs an outfit called legalese.io, and he's currently involved in leading an effort to create a new computer language, a new software language, specifically for the needs of codifying legal documents. So laws, contracts, agreements, things like that. So some really interesting stuff and some really interesting work. I'd love to sort of just go, I think we're small enough that we can do this. I'd love to go around the room for a second and just get a quick introduction from everybody, because I think part of it, what really makes this work is the community and the introductions and getting to know what other people are up to and interested in. So what I thought I'd do, one of the things on my agenda, thank you to Jaguar Land Rover, Tammy can't hear me, but for providing the space. And then thank you to Northwest Corporate Law and Zach, who's been helping me organize this one, for providing the food this time around. So with that, I'd love to go around and do 4 questions, and I didn't write them down, so I can either remind you, or if you don't get them all, that's okay too. There won't be a test. But I'd love to know who you are, what you do as sort of your day job, why you're attracted to legal hackers or legal innovation and technology, and then what's kind of the coolest thing that you've seen in the legal innovation space in the last little while? Cool or interesting? So I'll start. Again, I'm John Grant. In addition to having founded this, my day job is currently with a law firm called Fisher & Phillips, and I'm the project management and process improvement lead for that AmLaw 200 firm. I'm also currently chairing the Oregon Bar's Innovations Committee, which is, again, focused on using innovation and technology to drive access to justice through the bar, suggesting ways that the bar can better amplify that. I also founded the Agile Attorney Network, so I work with lawyers and law firms more informally these days, but trying to apply the principles of agile design and lean startup to the practice of law. I helped found Legal Hackers in part because I went to one in Seattle, and it was super interesting. And at the end of it, Dan Deere, who was the founder of that group, said, "There's no reason Portland shouldn't have one, and you should start it." And I said, "Okay." That was an effective recruitment technique. And I am very interested in, again, all the things they said. And then the coolest thing, I probably should have studied for this, the most interesting thing that I've seen around legal lately, I'm still pretty psyched, and it's not brand new news, but the shipment, the cotton shipment that left Houston probably a month and a half ago, that is set to arrive in China, I think any time now, where the entire contract around the delivery of that cotton is self-executing through the blockchain. So, and there's some Internet of Things sensors involved in measuring certain deliverables under the contract that will drive the price or drive the price. So I think that's pretty cool. So let's move around.
Yeah, I'm Darek Teller. I'm probably the only one here without a law degree. Maybe not. I'm the sales director at DocketBird. My background's in technology and in education technology specifically, but I worked in tech for about almost 20 years here in Portland. So what I do my day job is basically tech consulting, and then working with DocketBird as an example of that. I also work with Stelly, as a company that I run here in the Pearl. You might have heard of us. For legal innovation, I'm kind of new to the area. I just came out of working in education technology for 7 years. There's a lot of legacy products in both industries, so there's a similar desire to move more services to the cloud or automation. So with that in mind, I think probably one of the first things that I found really interesting in legal tech was the recap movement, which DocketBird kind of dovetails on that, but this part of the free law movement, the idea is just storing online all the open court record documents for posterity, just building a free access database for everyone. So I thought that was pretty cool when I learned about that.
That, I'm going to turn the microphone too. I wouldn't necessarily turn the camera, but for the world.
I'm Zach Patchett. I'm with Northwest Corporate Law. We're a transactional focused small firm that helps startups and small businesses. I actually found the Northwest Corporate Law through this meetup. Saw a presentation by Jason Gershenson, so I'm sure some of you have good friends with Andy Harris, who's now my partner. The reason why I'm interested in it, attending, is we do a lot of tech backend stuff to keep things lean and simple. And, we help a lot of clients who kind of see us as a startup in some way. So every idea that I hear here, I take out and bring back to the team to talk about. The coolest thing I've heard of recently is CodePact, which is similar to legalese.io, that they're trying to standardize contract language so that it can be machine readable. They use kind of a reference and call system, so you have a pile of predetermined agreement terms that everybody likes these terms, and instead of including the full body of the term in each agreement, you just kind of have a hyperlink to a specific phrase, and everybody knows what that means. It's kind of a new way of thinking about how to put together a contract that is a little bit more machine-oriented than having to have a lawyer read through it every time and tell you what it means.
Hi, I'm Kathy Trepka. I'm with the Oregon State Bar. I'm the
Lawyer Programs Coordinator. I'm here because I'm one of the staff people on the Innovations Committee of the Futures Task Force of the Bar. And the only thing I'm going to say about what I've seen exciting in the technology world is the fact that the Bar, an organization of lawyers, is interested in looking into technology, which is great.
I'm Bill Penn. I'm also from the bar, but I wear two hats. I'm the assistant director of the legal services program and also the assistant director of the law innovation. I'm here because Julie's holding it. She's my boss, but I'm also interested.
What's the coolest legal tech thing that you've seen this year? Or most interesting?
It's been a very brief year so far.
Well, okay. Well, 12 months, calendar year, not calendar year.
I just came from working at Lasso Legal Aid here, and in the last year, Lasso rolled out new computers to every desk in the state of the office that they have, upgraded their case management system, and did it all without dropping any service, right? Like no days off, no days, no clients, like just smooth. And to have like an implementation kick off and happen without losing client time is amazing. And to me, that's the cool thing that technology can do is if it's done right, if it's implemented right, even if it's as silly and simple as like we're putting a computer on every desk, if it can do it and do it without much clients, then that's great.
Excellent. I am Ben Willis. I have my JD and my MBA. I got them both simultaneously, so I don't take cultural allegiance to one side over the other. I work for the nation's largest legal staffing company, owned by the world's largest staffing company, Adecco, my company's special counsel. And that's kind of cool, but what I think is cool is the team that I'm part of nationally, which is part of an integration of an e-discovery company, which we just bought, and reverse engineering managed review solutions and lean solutions, and really starting to create a national and international database of workflow outlines that our company is now sponsoring and having some people in different markets gain information as consultants and go backwards and reverse engineer it. So I feel like I'm at the start of something kind of cool that has some buy-in from corporate that is definitely a sign of the times and a changing legal industry. And gosh, I'm probably immune to some of it because I see a lot of the stuff the way we see it. We see a lot of the technology, and I report mainly to Chicago leadership now, and I was just there with the e-discovery company, and just the amount of data that has now been being stored for as long as it has, and how much you can do to manipulate that is really impressive to me. And the fact that they're able to, similarly go through and find every contract from the last. Now, so many places have 30 years of contracts that they've been able to re-put into databases and to trace that. If you think of law, which is historically based in case law and precedent, now you have all this data to do something digitally with it. And just that in and of itself to me is very impressive.
Sounds like some companies need a retention policy.
Yeah. Right, yeah, destroy it.
Hello everyone, I'm Robert, and I write software at a software company by day. That was bioscience. And I'm interested in the legal tech space, kind of what Ben just said. There's a ton of documents out there, natural language data, and it's kind of an interesting problem space to work on. And I guess the most interesting thing, I don't know if it's legal tech or not, but apparently there's a legal dispute going on right now so that the PACER fees are unreasonable. And they win. So that they
Carl Malamud.
What's that?
Carl Malamud.
I don't know any details. I just saw it.
He's been on the front lines of that. I think he's actually part of the DC legal hackers group.
Great. very exciting.
Let's go around and then we'll come back. Go for it.
My name is Jake Schwartz. I'm with Linux Law Group. So I'm an attorney by day. I also write software on the side, which is probably why I'm interested in that here. I think the one of the most interesting things I've heard in legal tech recently is I was talking with the founder of this company, and what they do is they scan the SEC's and EDGAR database, and they try and develop, using machine learning, they try and make contract standards.
Yeah.
And so that's really interesting. But what's really interesting to me is actually what he told me for one of the problems that they're facing, which is that lawyers don't trust what comes out of it a lot of the time. Which I think is really interesting because that's like a really early thing that companies like Airbnb learn, which is the trust issues. You have all these companies trying to do all this machine learning and trying to make all these standards, but I think that's a commodity that can't forgive. I thought that's really interesting.
Yeah.
My name is Jim Open. I'm a small business and nonprofit attorney. I have a decent programming background. I'm no whiz. I guess one of the major things that interests me in this is I'm very interested in sliding scale fees and the proper calculation of sliding scales and kind of precipitate that. I don't think people measure poverty very well. I don't think they calibrate fees very well. So poverty, I don't understand poverty statistics. So I've been trying to develop tools to help do things in a better way. And kind of interested in how are legal innovations being implemented, which directions, third-party apps, programs, it's all. So I've tracked some of them. I'm mostly interested in just trying to see something like I'm interested in, like learning. And as far as innovations that I've seen and interested in, I don't know, I have to think of that.
My name is SJ. I'm actually a law librarian, so I also do not have a law degree. I started learning programming for fun in my free time, and just generally interested in improving public access to the legal system. And the cool innovation I've seen lately is an app that's been developed to assist pretrial and probation folks in fulfilling their obligations to the court without the burden of having to actually have to come to the court to check in. It's partially being driven by Judge Aiken was involved in the development, so I heard her speak about it. It looks very exciting.
My name is John Waker. I'm in charge of legal and compliance of the company called Payrange. It is a company that does mobile payments for coin-operated machines. What's the third question?
I don't remember what 3 was. Right there. But what's something like interesting in the legal or legal tech space that you?
I guess why I'm here is I don't really see a whole lot of interest in the legal tech space. I've seen it for that are pretty respectable. There was one called Lighter a couple of years ago trying to manage the contracting process. I thought that was really interesting. There was one I saw recently that was about a year or so ago, was a platform that enabled real-time updating of your company's terms and conditions on websites. But that's about as interesting.
Cool. All right. We're back around over here.
Hey,
You.
my name is McCoy Smith. I'm a intellectual property and patent attorney at works at Intel, with a pretty extensive background in free and open source software licensing. I should say free and open source licensing, since I have done a little bit of work in the area of hardware as well. Two technologies that I've had a little bit of a hand in working on, and for the most part have been developed by friends of mine. software package data exchange, which is the technology to identify licensing information for pieces of software as they move through the chain of distribution to make it easier for users to understand the licensing obligations and make sure they comply. There's OpenChain, which is really just now started publishing their work, but their initiative is intended to come up with standardized practices for the management of the development of software within an organization to ensure they're fully compliant with all licensing obligations, particularly open source ones. They've got a brand new publicly accessible training module accessible to anybody who wants to help their employees or themselves learn about intellectual property, software licensing, free and open source licensing. Encourage you to check that out if that's something you're interested in.
Cool. Thanks. All right, you're on.
I'm Alex Wall. I work in a software company that called Radar that does privacy, data breach, notification, compliance assessments. I am a counsel, a privacy officer, and sometimes help with software QA. I like technology a lot. I like tools. I like solving problems. So what did I guess in the last, recently I've been exploring encrypted communications products just because I think privacy is important right now. So I guess I would recommend the app Signal. It's total end-to-end encryption. It's a good way to personally message someone if it never comes out. WhatsApp is still secure, although it has some things. There's an argument. And I like the tool called Box Cryptor that lets you use OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, and it's pretty easy to use, and it encrypts the contents of everything in there, so even if someone had access to your account, they couldn't see what was in there. So,
What was the name of it?
Box Cryptor, the last one. Yeah.
I'm Dave Madden. I am a patent attorney. I do software, a lot of software for guys in the garage type, that level of development in startups. I've got about 20 years of software development and some hardware of my own, and a few patents. The most interesting tech thing, it's not specifically legal tech, but it is encryption. I understand that Darek Levinson is restarting LavaBit, and I'm excited to have that coming back online. And I'm trying to get in touch with him because I've got a patent of my own that I think he would be able to exploit, and I would love to let him do that.
For those of us who don't know, what's LavaBit do?
It's encrypted email.
Todd?
My name's Todd Kennedy, and I guess I kind of split my day jobs. I'm a patent litigator and a class action litigator, but I also recently founded DocketBird, which I'm going to show you later, so I kind of divide my time between those things. The most interesting piece of legal tech that I've seen lately is probably maybe what you were referring to, which is being able to embed applications, software applications into the blockchain. And the one I'm thinking of is called Ethereum, although is that the same one you're just talking about?
I think that's one, yeah. I don't dive too deep into the blockchain.
Right, it's fascinating. Let me see if I can explain my understanding of it in like 30 seconds, which is that right now, if you go to a gambling software website and you spin a roulette wheel, there's no way you can really trust what the odds are. It could be totally stacked against you. But with Ethereum, you can actually embed an open source gambling application, or whatever application you want, into the blockchain, and it's open source, so anyone can review it and look at the code and say, oh yeah, this is a legitimate roulette wheel. And now that it's in the blockchain, anyone can play it. Nobody can modify that code And so it's absolute trust in what you're getting out of that application. But it's not just gambling. You can expand it to shipping cotton across the world and making sure that your contract is fulfilled. So it's fascinating.
I'm Kieran Connolly. I'm a partner in the Paul Janet firm, and litigator by day. Got sort of hobbyist interest, I guess, in coding and like technology a lot. I guess I don't know what the most exciting thing of legal tech that I've seen recently is. I'm generally pleased with the move by lawyers to embrace technology more broadly. But I think the maybe more exciting thing is the shift that I think is inevitable in the next 15 years away from the billable hour and to a more sort of value-based economy, and the ability of technology to help us quantify and figure out how to do that the right way.
Amen to that.
I'm Rob Wilcox. I've been a technologist at the leading edge of new technology. My interest is in legal tech applied to energy markets, and also computational law applied to contracts, which is that's an easy call, and to patents, a hard call. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave early, so I'll apologize.
Quite all right. We're all volunteers. Cool. And then, yeah,
I'm Jane Rivadeneira. I am with the Legal Services Corporation, which is actually based in Washington, D.C. And I work on a special grant program we have called the Technology Initiative Grants, which we get a little bit of money to use tech. How do you use technology for increasing access to justice, for self-help materials, things like that, aimed towards low-income population. We just came back from a conference with about 300 people talking about innovation, and it's kind of exciting to see the growth of and the attention to the use of technology in this space. You know, there's a lot going on. We had a little hackathon before the conference. You know, some different things I've mentioned would be sort of the use of triage tools for self-help purposes. You know, how do you get people to the right place? How do you help people even know that they have a legal issue? Is you have to kind of take that step back. And then the other thing would be kind of the prospect of artificial intelligence in this space, using chatbots, and what I just learned about what happened with Google Translate, for instance, is now using artificial intelligence, and apparently just is a phenomenal difference in the ability to provide more resources and information that way.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank. We have an Agile Attorneys Slack group that a bunch of agency people are on, including Ken Grady from Cyclops Shaw, who's now teaching at Michigan State, and he's teaching in AI and the law. And he's actually very, he thinks that AI is very much on the leading edge of the hype curve for now, and that we are still going to be approaching the trough of despair before we move into the what is it, the plateau of productivity. So, all right, now let our late speakers, Brian. So, who are you? What interests you? And then, what's kind of the coolest thing, legal tech-wise, that you're aware of somewhat recently?
That would be easy. My name is Brian Gibson. I'm a litigator, I guess, primarily employment law, but other things as well. What am I interested in? Is that,
yeah.
So I'm a brand new solo attorney. I was at Stoll Reeves for 10 years and so I guess using a lot of software to help automate things in my day-to-day practice. So I guess I have very mundane rubber meets the road type interests in how technology can help me. And the sexiest piece of legal tech I've used is probably Clio, which probably doesn't even count in this group, but I think it's pretty cool so far.
Joshua Lennon, if you're watching, pull that clip out. And then Alex, want to say hi real quick?
Hi, yeah, I'm Alex Devendra. I'm an attorney/designer here in Portland. And on the legal tech side, I guess I would say my interest is in kind of that initial barrier, I think, especially for solos and small firms, of just onboarding and learning something new, because it seems like no one has the time to slow down at all and just start using something new. So figuring out how we can help attorneys do that.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so I think that's everybody. Thank you all. And again, sort of hopefully we can cross-pollinate as much as possible. The one other sort of housekeeping thing that I wanted to just sort of mention, and at least maybe get the wheels churning, if not exactly the ball rolling, is that as part of the regulatory committee of the Futures Task Force of the Oregon State Bar, which is the sister committee to the Innovations Committee that I'm chairing, there is a subcommittee that is working on certain issues surrounding self-help and self-guided legal services. And there are a few needs that have emerged, or questions that have emerged, specifically around there are actually a tremendous number of sort of self-help legal forms available for various legal processes in Oregon, but there is no clearinghouse for them. So they're scattered to the winds, right? Not an uncommon problem. And in our meeting, we thought that would be an interesting topic to bring up as part of a potential hackathon, which we have not had, and that's something that many of the legal hackers communities have done. And so brainstorming the hackathon, and Zach and I talked about this a little bit the other day, we're kind of loosely thinking of it as maybe a hybrid between a hackathon and a startup weekend, where we would get maybe between 2 and 5 different sort of access to justice type organizations, legal services, legal aid, medical legal partnerships, et cetera, to pitch a problem that they are having that they would like some other brains to help them come up with a at least minimum viable product solution for us. So again, very much in like sort of the brainstorming wheels churning stage, but 2 requests I would have is, number one, does the idea of a legal hackathon interest just, on a most fundamental level, folks in this room? Would you be willing to give up a Saturday for it? Put it that way. Cool. So more or less, and hopefully we can attract some other folks too. And then if you raise your hand and would be interested in helping organize, I'd love for you to reach out to me through either email, john@agileattorney.net, or through the Meetup channel, and you can get. So that's about it for now. I will turn it over to Darek and Todd. Tell us a little bit about DocketBird.
I think Todd's going to, as the founder, he's going to give a little bit of background, and then I'll do a real quick demo.
Cool.
Well, thank you again for having us out. Just a show of hands, who uses Pacer on a weekly basis? So maybe half or so. After I graduated from law school, I clerked on the federal district court for a couple of years, and that was my first exposure to Pacer. I was actually in the Western District of Missouri, which is, I think, one of the trial districts for ECF. It was one of the first districts to actually use that and test it out before they rolled it out nationwide. But I had a really great support staff at the court, so my interaction with Pacer was a little limited, although the brief interaction that I had was quite frustrating. After that, I went and worked for a large litigation firm in San Francisco, and that firm's way of approaching things was that they'll pay their lawyers at the top of the market, but they'll pay their support staff at the bottom of the market in order to fund the payment for the lawyers, which sounds nice, but it actually was terrible because we had really experienced lawyers who were super busy working on interesting cases, but we had support staff who usually had only been working for a couple of years, because as soon as they had a couple of years under their belt, they would go move somewhere else. So that meant that the lawyers really had to do the ECF and Pacer work themselves. And at the end of a long day, it's super frustrating, to go on to Pacer and have to download these documents and print them yourself. And I think the moment at which I had a kind of a personal break, almost like a nervous breakdown, is that we were getting ready to go to trial. It was a patent case. We were defending Google. It was Google's first patent trial in the Eastern District of Texas. And we had to find very specific documents. And these are docket sheets that are, almost 1,000 docket entries long. And we had to search through these docket entries to find specific things that the court had said, or that parties had said, so that we didn't contradict each other, and made sure that we told the court what it had actually done earlier. And of course, there's no way to do that using ECF. You can't log in and search, which is just so ridiculous. And so the solution for us was for our paralegal to go online and to manually check to see which documents had not already been downloaded, to manually download all the ones that had not been, which takes an entire day, by the way. And then to take those PDF documents to make sure that they were OCR'd, and then send them to a third-party company who would then upload them to their database and index them onto what would usually be used as just a document production searching tool like Concordance or something like that. So that was the solution, and it worked, but it took a tremendous amount of time. And it was very frustrating. And so it was around that time that I had the idea that somebody should do something about this. And anyway, but I was very busy with my patent litigation practice. And then I went to work for a small firm where we have no administrative assistants at all. It's really just us. So there's 7 of us, and I'm kind of the IT guy for the firm. So I handle like the network drive and all of that. And at one point, my schedule cleared up a little bit, and I decided I would sit down to program this product, which is now named DocketBird. And the idea of DocketBird is simply to streamline a working lawyer's use of Pacer. It's not really a research tool. It's not for finding out what the law says about any particular topic. This is really made for the day-to-day grudge that litigators and bankruptcy lawyers and disability lawyers face. Making sure you can access your documents as quickly as possible, that you never have to download a document more than once and pay the high Pacer fees, and making sure that you can search things. So we just try to make it as easy as possible for working lawyers. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of show you what our service looks like, and Todd gave a good introduction already. Basically, DocketBird just makes your day-to-day workflow more efficient, so it'll save you time, and it can also save you a little bit of money on your Pacer bill by crowdsourcing documents, which I'll show you what I mean. Oh, yeah, so first of all, you have to have internet for it to work. Do you have a Wi-Fi?
Yeah, OSTC. And easy access all over.
So really, what I do is I talk to all the firms and sort of do the wheeling and dealing at DocketBird. So I talk to a variety of firms, some solo practices, all the way up to really big firms with hundreds of attorneys. And the one need that I keep encountering over and over is there's just a lot of emailing going on at most firms, especially bigger firms. So common problem is somebody needs a document that's on Pacer, so they'll email a paralegal or an assistant at the firm, and they'll email them the document, and the whole process can take 5-10 minutes or longer. And so what DocketBird really does is just centralizes all your documents on the cloud, and so it just makes it a lot easier to get what you need, like Todd was saying, when you need it. So for example, this is Todd's account that he uses frequently. So the idea here is you would log in, you have all your cases, all your federal cases listed. You can jump to any docket sheet, you know, just by a quick click. This is all running on Amazon, so it's a lot faster than Pacer. And then you're reaching filing activity sorted based on the cases that you're currently working. So the idea is you don't need to go to Pacer or ECF anymore. You would simply log into your DocketBird account and do all your federal document work from there. So for example, the search feature that Todd mentioned, so we index all your Pacer documents as you get free looks as they come in. So what you can do is you can have a whole case and you want to find a specific passage, you just put in your search term. So I'll put in good cause. And you can use Boolean operators here and get really specific about what you want to look for. So I look for the term good cause in the whole case. It tells me which documents have that term and where in those documents, right? So it saves you a ton of time from having to open a bunch of different PDFs. And so little things like that are really what DocketBird's about. It's a very lightweight tool. But for example, let's say you need to send this document to your staff or a client. You just click share, put in the email address, maybe you put a note. It's all done from DocketBird. You don't need to open your Microsoft Outlook or anything, right? Similar to that, you can do stuff like you can do a bulk download really easily. You know, let's say you want to get a bunch of different files at once. It's all stored on Amazon, so it's really fast. And then you can set up your own custom file names. You can automate a lot of this. And then, for example, the free looks will automatically store them and send them to you as the court sends them out. So you'll get an email with the latest filing ready to go right there. You can look at it on your phone. So the idea is to just take the manual labor tasks that normally you or your assistants would do, and you automate as much as possible, and it'll just free up time. And then the last thing I'll mention, going back to sort of the free log movement, and I think this is kind of what John is more interested in, is like how can we make legal information more accessible for everybody? So we crowdsource all the documents that come through DocketBird. So if somebody at a different firm downloads a document, it becomes free for everybody on DocketBird. And that includes if you're a law student and you log in and you go to a historically important case, those documents would be free, right? So the idea here is we're building a repository that's basically more accessible for everyone, and then it'll save you money on those Pacer fees that, as you know, right now, the cost to run Pacer is not that much, but they're basically costing a lot. So they're kind of hot water right now as a government-backed entity. You know, why are they making all this money off of these document fees? So this is kind of a counter to that. So a lot of firms are moving to cloud storage, not just to cut down on fees, but to just make it easier to get their documents. So that's what DocketBird does. And we also have Dropbox integration, which is something basically, just to give you a little story about what we did the last few months. We kept talking to these different firms that are using our service. We're like, what do you need that we don't have? And time again, it's Dropbox integration. It's kind of a gray area in law right now because some people don't think Dropbox is that secure. It might not be, but for civil cases that don't involve confidential information, it's pretty much what a lot of firms are using. So what we'll do is we have an automation plugin. We'll automatically send all your Pacer documents and organize them for you and put them in the correct cases and districts. And it's all hands off. Once you sync it up, it does it automatically. So that's our latest big feature. Yeah, I don't want to make it too salesy here. So if you have any questions, just feel free to email me anytime. I'd love to take a chat about it. Todd, do you want to mention anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the one thing I would say, I don't know if it's clear to those who don't use Pacer and ECF, but if you're an attorney of record on a case, then you get filing notifications every time a filing comes in. And Pacer allows you what they call their free look. So when you get an email, only if you're an attorney of record, you can click on that free look link and you get your document for free. But you only get to do that one time. After that, you've got to pay up to $3. So what we do with the ECF free look is you can integrate your ECF account with DocketBird. So now the court will send your filing notifications not only to you, but also straight to DocketBird. We'll harvest that free look and we'll download the document for free. And then you and everyone else who uses DocketBird, even if you're not attorneys of record, can have full access to that document for no charge. So if everyone used DocketBird, the federal courts wouldn't make any money.
Yes, question.
Do you contribute the free look, the other documents that you download, do you contribute it to the recap project as well?
That's a great question. Yeah, we actually have been talking with the recap project, and the way they work is they charge a fee to be part of their network. As a company, they would charge us a fee, and then we would have access to all of their documents. So that if one of our users wanted to download a document that we don't have, then we would ping the recap network and we would get that document. And that's part of our fee. And then the other thing is, of course, the documents that you're going to get, like you were saying, we send to recap. And that's something that we're still considering. I honestly, right now, I don't know what their fee is. We're still in early talks with them. But, yeah, good question.
So how long have you, how long has DocketBird existed? And kind of what does your evolution look like over different iterations?
Yeah, we were very much a startup. We launched it for test about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was in beta for a year. It was used by some larger law firms on a limited basis. And after about a year, we felt really comfortable with its performance. And so we've been ramping up slowly, kind of taking more of a local approach. Local first being just Oregon, and now we've expanded into Washington, starting to expand in California. But we have, and it's so interesting to think about how people find us on the web. I still don't really know. We have users all over the country now. But we're very much a startup. There is an established competitor that we have. It's called Pacer Pro. They've been around for a while. They have a lot of large law firms that have signed up with them. And our approach has just been to try to do everything better than them and do it a little more cheaply, with kind of an emphasis, I think, on the user interface. That's kind of my passion, I guess, is user interface, making things beautiful.
Cool. Do you talk to the courts at all about, like, if they're planning changes to Pacer, or would incorporate some of these features?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you said it, because the biggest challenge with this application has been interfacing with the court system, because every district in the country has its own Pacer version. And there are main versions, but then each court can kind of do its own development work. So we're always surprised by how little tiny changes can break the whole system. We're constantly revising our code to account for these differences. I just had somebody sign up who had it for the first time, a District of Alaska case, and it's broken, part of the system. So we're trying to fix that. And usually these are minor things that can be accounted for, but there's no notice given when a court, upgrades to a different ECF system. There may be an email that goes out to lawyers that they get telling them that the system is going to be down for an upgrade, but we have no idea what that means. There is a nationwide initiative to upgrade to this thing called Next Gen Pacer, which is really just, it seems to really just be kind of I don't know why they call it Next Gen, because it seems like it's really just the same thing, just like a little bit of a different interface and no new features that I can really tell, other than lawyers now have a single login for each Next Gen system instead of having a separate login for each district. Just kind of yeah, it's not great. But that kind of threw us for a little loop too, because there's so many different permutations that someone could have. They could have a Next Gen account, but logging into a non-Next Gen system, and that affects the code in various ways. So that's really, from a coding perspective, that's been the most difficult part of this project.
I left my firm right around the time when we used to have like a firm-wide login, and then they were gonna require all attorneys to have individual logins. Did that affect what you guys were doing?
Yes, that may be part of the next gen thing, because yeah, exactly. A lot of firms had a firm-wide login, and that could be used for Pacer for searching for your documents, but not for filing. And now, instead of doing that, each lawyer has one set of credentials, and that is used for both searching and for filing, which it has advantages in that you don't have to memorize a million different login credentials if you're in different districts, but it also has drawbacks in terms of security, because there is an advantage to having a search-only account that cannot be used for filing, and you have everyone at your law firm who can use that, and it's a little bit easier to manage that from a firm perspective. So.
Seems like an odd topic for a hacker to like want to come in and make illicit court filings, but it's not unthinkable.
Yeah,
depending on the case and the profile and the companies and
right. Yeah, I've never heard of that sort of thing happening. Someone hacking someone's account and actually making ECF filings. You'd have to be super. I mean, I guess you could really do a lot of damage if you were really sophisticated, but I've never heard of anyone.
I assume there was supposed to be like an incompetent assistant accidentally filing something.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think your point's an interesting one though, because I mean, as I've dived more into legal tech and legal hacking and civic hacking, lack of standards is a real barrier to, sort of the private software developer enterprise, free market ability to basically enhance the systems of, or enhance the usability or the features, whatever, of what's ultimately public data, but because there's not the standards, consistency, or whatever, then it winds up being very brittle. I think there's some example, I think Trademarkia has done an interesting job of scraping the USPTO trademark database, and Google Patents has done a pretty good job of scraping the USPTO patent database. But those are kind of more the exception than the rule. I think, that a lot of, if you talk to some of the Code for America folks or other civic hackers, like the data standards and data consistency winds up being a huge barrier. And it's something, for bar folks, and I'm trying to sort of introduce some of these concepts through the committee that, not only do we need to be more cognizant of data, but we need to be more cognizant of the structure and consistency and the potential third-party uses so that we don't break systems that are useful and good to the public. Even if I suppose they threaten the judiciary's revenue source.
Exactly.
Yep.
Have any plans to expand the state ECF?
Yeah, yes, we do. And really, when you think about all the different court systems that there are, I mean, we've just scratched the surface, because the real action is in the state courts. And that, if somebody could tackle that, it's an enormous undertaking, because there's just so many different kinds of systems. There are a few large entities that have programs that are used by various state courts, but we still don't really have a handle on what percent, I guess what the really big players are and what percent of the state market we could conquer. Because like I said, we're still trying to figure out, we're still trying to perfect, I guess, our access to the federal courts. But yeah, that's definitely the next step. And then there's the ITC. Let's see what else. There's probably all kinds of things that I'm not thinking of. Yeah, ETAB, exactly.
You're saying you keep growing and put the Pacer revenue stream. Where's the rubber meet the road on terms of service or terms of use? Do you guys have any concerns there? Is it all for everybody's equal accounts? And so they just put the information somewhere else on their computer?
So would the concern be with respect to confidential documents or with?
Crawling, I guess, maybe. Most federal services would call me, have the issue because there's revenues required behind it.
Oh, I see, yeah.
That's kind of the lawyer's question.
Right. Well, yeah, so when Recap came out, and I know people have mentioned Recap, but I don't know if anyone's really explained what it is. Recap is a plugin that you can use on your browser. And so when you log in using your browser to ECF, when you download a document, then Recap has the ability to capture that document and then make it freely available to everyone. And then the flip side of that is that when you're using your browser, you can see, when you're accessing the docket sheet, you can see what documents are freely available that are on Recap, so you can get those documents for free. And if anyone has rocked the boat with the federal courts, it's Recap. Although I think Pacer Pro is probably coming close now too. And Recap's a non-profit, and that's their whole thing, is to make legal documents available for free. And the courts, I don't know about, I think it's a select number of courts. I don't think there's anything that came down from the AO, but a select number of courts put out notices that Recap is not authorized and the lawyers should not use it. And I don't know how far they went with their announcement, but I think you mentioned you just saw one of those announcements the other day. Yeah. So they don't like it. They don't like it. But the federal courts have made an API available for programmers. And, I did write to them early in this process and asked them if they had an API. And I said in my email, I don't want to, interfere with the court's process or technology. So I'd be happy to talk with someone about the best way to develop this software. And the response I got back was just a PDF that had instructions on how to use their API. And so then I spent a few days with their API and trying to make it work, and I realized that it's just terribly broken. There are some aspects of the API that work, and they work really well, but then there are other aspects that are documented, but they just simply don't work at all. It's not terribly surprising. The other thing I noticed is that most API, every API I've ever used has a paging feature. So, for example, if you are using an API to search and get millions of documents, the API is always going to be smart enough to say, we have millions of results. Here's the first page. I'm going to give you 100 results or 1,000. And then you have to do the next coding call to get the next page of results, because nobody wants a million results when you just want the first page, because it's a lot faster. It's cheaper for the company running the API. So when I was testing the Pacer API, I was searching for my name, as because you can do an attorney search. This is just to test it to make sure my program's working. So I'm doing this over and over again. It keeps breaking, and I keep coding. And then finally, I get it fixed, and I get my results back. And instead of one page, it's like 100 pages of Kennedy, right? Maybe 1,000 pages. I don't remember. All I know is that when I checked my Pacer bill, I about fell out of my chair. I had a $15,000 Pacer bill just for searching for my last name over and over and over again. So I had to submit a request to the courts. There's a form that they have. I guess that happens all the time. And they forgave all of it.
I think I'm the only person who tried to use your API.
Yeah, so fortunately they were forgiven.
Yeah, and Recap is Pacer spelled backwards too. Convenient that they're both actual English words. Any other questions? Thoughts? All right, well, thanks everyone for coming, and feel free to grab some more pizza and hang out and chat. And if you're interested in legal hacker, we're going to try to do. Sorry, and I'll go in front of the camera since that's kind of, I guess, what it's there for. We're kind of working on an every other month schedule. Still very rough. We've actually got. We're looking to do a presentation. Amber Hollister from the bar is going to talk about the ethics of legal innovation. She is ethics counsel for the bar. And so I think that's going to be really interesting, and particularly in light of the regulatory committee. You know, one of the drums I've been beating lately is that legal regulation is working really well for those people who actually access lawyers, but that's the vast minority of the population, right? 80% of people are generally not using the traditional civil legal justice system to solve their needs. And so is the cost or the way that we've developed the legal regulatory system too focused on the needs of the wrong user set? And so I hope to press Amber on that a little bit more and see. Not that she has any power over one way or the other, but I do think that those are some of the questions we need to start asking, particularly, and I don't want to think I was going to mention that I thought was interesting and not at all a legal tech thing. But did anyone else see the post this week that Wisconsin has hit peak lawyer? So the number of lawyers in Wisconsin has started to drop. And I actually looked at an ABA report, and Wisconsin is now the 15th state whose legal population has started, lawyer population has started to drop.
Just here in Oregon, the rate of increase has definitely slowed.
Yeah, well, I think we
haven't started dropping yet, but the rate of increase.
I think we only added a net like 30 or 40 lawyers last year. And that was, you know, Wisconsin had been adding, prior to 2007 or 8, they've been adding on the order of 400 new lawyers a year, and then over the last 10 years, it's been dropping pretty consistently. It's gone, and yeah, both. I know Washington is very concerned. A member of that bar too, that there's going to be a lawyer shortage, right, or peak lawyer. Some people might applaud peak lawyer. I don't know, but it does have some interesting ramifications on access to legal services. So anyway, we'll hit Amber up for some of that.
Do you know when that is?
We don't have a firm date yet, but I will schedule it through the meetup. And then the other one I'm hoping to get for February, March. So we'd be looking for Amber in May. In March, I'm hoping to get Rob Bart, who Rob is part of. He was a Lewis and Clark law grad, but he never actually practiced, and he's running the Forge co-working space over at I think it's 12th and Morrison. He's been involved in some interesting incubator, accelerator type projects, one of them around sort of the food industry, and he's just in the early stages of launching one that is focused on AI and machine learning applications for professional services, including law. So hoping to get Rob to talk a little bit about that, and now we can put it on notice on the internet, so it has to happen. So look for announcements on both of those, and then if anyone has either topics that they would like to present on, which I'm always excited to hear, or ideas or has connections of other people around the Portland community, or just things you'd like to know about. You know, sometimes we can attract folks that are kind of coming through town that maybe pitching their legal tech products to local firms. And I've got some pretty good connections to the industry. But if you have ideas, or if you have thoughts, please reach out to me, and we'll, or Zach, actually, and we'll try to make it happen. So that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Shut this down.